Hi there, Mr. Automation, with the episode on pipeline functions and how do you use them properly. Let's switch to my screen. First I explain a little bit and then we go to the code. And so here on the left side you see here, let me go to the brushes. Small brush, let's take yellow for the sake. So we have some PowerShell code here. I'm going to show that in a second. And with that PowerShell code, we're going to enumerate some files on the file system. And then we go to the important part and we go to functions. So basically we want to do something for all those files that we have inside of an array. You have different types of looping techniques and also how they operate against a function and how they behave against a function. And I want to create some awareness on this. So basically, whenever you want to do some magic in a function, right? I call it magic, on a bunch of files this time. You often want to do, you always want to do the same for each item, right? But perhaps in the process, you also need to set up a database connection initially. And you need to break that up again. You can do that, of course, in your code, and after your function calls, you can break that again. But you can also do it inside of your function. It's a little bit more neater, I think, because it belongs there. And then you can use the approach of begin. So here you have a begin block inside of a function. You have a process block. You have an end block here, right? So you have 3 parts. This begin block always executes once for all the items that you throw inside of that function, at least if you do it properly on the pipeline. I'll show that in a second. Then you have the process block. The process processes each item in the array. And then you have the end block here, and this end block also is processed once for all the items in the array, and that's basically where you clean up and disconnect your database connection again. So that's a simple overview on how that works and how that looks like inside of a code editor, right? So here I have a function. Here are some parameters like command line bindings and this parameter value from pipeline. This means that this function accepts output from the pipeline, right? So you can get something with the command line, put it on the pipeline and pass it to this function basically. Provided that it is a file, because I'm doing something with files inside of this function. So just a demo. But inside of this function, you will see a begin block, and this begin block runs once for all items in the array if you loop properly. This process block runs for each item in the array, and the end block runs once when all the items are processed. So let's have a look how that actually works, right? So here I press F10. So now I have all the items in the windows. You see that? A couple of folders and files. I have them here. And what I do now is I pipe them to that function I have, right? This mrb function. And what will happen is that I will pass all these files here, right? I will pass them at once inside of this function. And then only for the, I will take a red color, by the way, it's perhaps a little bit more clear. Only for the first file that goes to that function, that begin block is called. We take another color. Then all the files, the remaining files or folders here, also are inside of that function, but only go to the process block. And I need to draw it correctly because this one also goes to the process block, of course. The first one is also processed, but it also begins there. It's processed. And then the last item, I'll take a different color again. So imagine this last file or folder also goes to the function, but that goes to the end block. That is where you destroy everything. So I'll show you how that actually works. So what I'm saying here is that this one runs once. This one runs for each item in the array, and this one runs once at the end, right? On the last item, and this one runs on the first item. Let's see if we now actually pipe all these files or folders to that function. So let's continue the code. And you have an example here of the output here down. And what you can see here is that if you scroll a little bit up, you will notice that this run once for the whole array. So this is this begin part once. Then we have a couple of lines here that run for each item in the array, and you see different folders there, right? It's exactly what we do here. We pipe the full name here, and I show you that this myval is also available in this process block, so you can reuse that value as well here and there. Imagine that you of course set up a database connection here. I mean, the example I'm giving here makes no sense to use a pipeline at all, but it's just for demo purposes, right? Imagine the database connection takes a couple of seconds to set up, perhaps even 10 seconds. And you need to do that 1,000 times. That's very consuming if you call your function over and over again and we keep connecting. That's where this approach comes into the picture, so to speak. Then in the beginning you connect, then you process all the items with that same connection, and then in the end you disconnect that connection. So, and if you scroll down here, you will see that this also runs once for the whole array, and it's this last line. Okay. So I hope this picture that I draw here is now sort of in sync with the code that you see here, and you understand how it works. And now I'll show a couple of wrong examples, because I can't say they're wrong, but I wouldn't use them. Let's put it that way. Okay. I will stop the code. So we have this we have that now in memory. I'll show that we have that in memory. And what I do here is for I just do a count on the array, and I just call this function that I have the same way, but then with basically for each item I call that function, and I'll show you what you get then. That's exactly what I meant. So of course every step is run, because you're only passing in one item at a time instead of the whole bunch, right? If you want to do these kinds of looping mechanisms, those are fine, those are fast as well, right? Just the same as this one, the for each item and items is the fastest one. But don't use this inside of your pipeline then, these kinds of mechanisms, and you can remove the begin, the process, and the end block as a whole. You can just write your code inside of the function itself. It's not needed, all this overhead. And I see a lot of nice functions on the internet, by the way, but then you see how they got implemented. Then you often see these kinds of loops, and then I don't understand that. It could be a wrong example, of course, doesn't matter. I just want to create some awareness. I don't want to burn anyone or anything, any people. Not my intentions at all. So I showed you correct example. Now I show you how the wrong example works, and you saw that already here, right? You saw all these lines now getting executed every time. If I use the all dot for each, basically the same. I'll show that as well. You get the same. This is running for each item basically every time again. And for this, if you pipe it to the for each and then pipe it to my function I created, get the same result again. And if you do it this way, this for each looping mechanism also gets the same result. But basically, when you use the point I'm trying to make here is whenever you write these kinds of functions with command line bindings and value from pipeline, and you have a begin, a process, and an end block, then always use this technique to actually call your function, because it's a pipeline based function. So what you do is you take your whole array, put it on the pipeline, and then pass it to that function, and then this technology with this begin, process, and end comes into the picture. So otherwise just don't use the begin, process, and end blocks, and this top neither with the value from pipeline, because it makes no sense if you don't use a pipeline but what you write a function that does accept it. At least that's my opinion. So I think that's it. I don't need to spend much more time and explanation on this. It should be quite clear at this point. Yes, I'm happy. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again. Bye.